Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin, the weekly chat show where conversations about race are never off the table. We're your hosts, Quaviondre Williams.
And Daquon Wilson.
So let's get into this week's conversation. What's hot on the table this week?
After 5 years, Grammy Award winning rapper Kendrick Lamar released a brand new, highly anticipated album entitled Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. The album garnered over 60 million streams during its launch, making it have the record of the largest amount of first day streams in 2022 so far. Despite this, the album has received mixed reviews. Some of the criticism stems from the inclusion of fellow rapper Kodak Black on the album, who has been accused of rape in the past and pleaded guilty for first degree assault and battery charges. However, a large amount of the critique of Lamar's recent works stems from the song Auntie Diaries, which is described by Slate as Lamar's, quote, most controversial song in years, end quote. In the song, Lamar retells his experience with his two trans relatives, his complicated journey of growth, and grapples with transphobia in the Black community and Black church. However, the controversy comes in from his use of language and pronouns. In the song, he used the F slur about 10 times and repeatedly dead named and misgendered his relatives. As trans activist Raquel Willis tweeted, quote, if you think dead naming, misgendering, and wielding slurs is the pinnacle of LGBTQ plus allyship, you got a lot of work to do, boo. Why must cishet men always push a boundary with us and expect us to be grateful? End quote. Though there were some that came to Lamar's defense with sentiments such as Lamar's usage is intended to show his growth, and it was necessary to say the word for people to get it, so people should just get over it or just not listen to it. So, Andre, that begs the question, is Auntie Diaries trans allyship?
Not at all. I'm I'm getting really tired of people that are not a part of a specific marginalized community using the trauma of others to show their growth or wokeness. Like Kendrick Lamar is not a part of the LGBTQIA community as far as we are aware. And regardless of his intention, his blatant disregard for the trauma of his trans relatives he used to line his pockets and boost his sales among woke audiences is a clear example of cishet entitlement. Yet again, someone who is not a part of a community believes that their voice is more important to streamline to the masses than the actual people who suffer at the hands of specific forms of oppression. It was wholly unnecessary for Lamar to use the F slur and to dead name his relatives for the message to be achieved. The whole point of allyship and advocacy is to aid marginalized communities in the fight for progress. It's about using whatever privilege you hold, be it straight privilege, male privilege, white privilege, cis privilege, and so on, to magnify the voices of those who are unheard due to their oppressed standing in society. That was not what Kendrick Lamar did. What he did was use the struggle of his trans relatives to make him look good to the media. And what he did was give permission to the masses to sing, play, and cover a song that exploits the pain of his trans relatives and possibly continues to traumatize them. Jason Lambers, an adolescent psychiatrist, states that dead naming a trans person, quote, can be reminding them of the period in their lives before they could take steps to affirm who they are. Dead naming might bring them back into those more negative times in their lives. And often that gender dysphoria, the distress that comes from one's sex assigned at birth not lining up with their true gender identity, can be associated with depression and anxiety. And to add insult to injury, I'm sure that the two trans relatives that Kendrick is referring to in this song haven't gotten a check or any kind of profit from the song. If they were even consulted about it in the first place, Daquon. And again, he could have easily talked about grappling with transphobia without using homophobic slurs or designating people. But what really gets me is how badly some of these supposed allies want pats on the back from marginalized communities they help protect. These allies want to center their own straight guilt, white guilt, cis guilt, and want to talk about how hard it was for them to confront their own bigoted ideology without taking into consideration the fact that there are people who actually live the consequences of that bigotry. Like, you don't get brownie points for unpacking your problematic mindset. You don't get a pat on the back for not being an asshole, and you don't deserve flowers or praise for being a decent fucking human being. Like, if Kendrick Lamar was writing a song about unpacking his own bigotry with a focus on the people who have been affected by it, he should have partnered with those people or other members of the community, or literally fucking Googled how to reflect on your bigotry without using the language of the oppressor to do so. Like, and I don't really think that it's that hard to know whether or not you should or shouldn't say a certain slur. Like, Daquon, I go by this rule. If no one would ever think to use a particular derogatory word as a slur against me, then that's a good indication that I shouldn't be saying the word. But I want to pass this question back to you. Is this song true allyship, and is it ever appropriate for cishet people to say the F slur?
I'm gonna have to go with no on both accounts. You know, one of the most frustrating parts about this is the fact that Kendrick Lamar is like easily top 5 greatest lyricist of this time, and yet he still couldn't find a way to just like create something without saying the word. Like, that's just baffling to me, because like, honestly, there are so many different ways he could have went about it. People are literally saying that there are so many different ways that you could have gotten this point across without saying it. And it's like, use something else, word it in a different way, literally anything. Like, if you're that great of a lyricist, you should be able to, like, on the flip of a dime, switch something up and like find, you know, unique and nuanced ways of describing these different types of concepts. And so that's why it's so frustrating, beyond just like he shouldn't have been saying it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I also think that I agree with you that this is something that's, you know, allyship is supposed to be amplifying voices.
Yes.
It's not supposed to be you taking your, you know, privilege and voicing over others. Because the crazy part is I remember being on Twitter and somebody was like, y'all shouldn't dog Kendrick Lamar and cancel him because, you know, he's doing something that nobody does. Like, nobody talks about transness and gayness and all that stuff. And I'm like, there are literal trans and gay and bisexual and queer rappers, even mainstream rappers. And it's like, the problem isn't nobody's talking about it. The problem is you're not listening. And so in this situation, this was a prime time for him to literally partner with somebody. Or even, my biggest thing is I have not heard any perspectives from his relatives at all. Were they consulted? Did they have any say? Because, you know, if this is a song about them and their trauma and they were like, you know what, I'm fine with it, whatever, then like, all right, that's what it is. People can still have critiques of it because it's public art that you put out and people can critique that. And that's what I think this is. So many people are thinking that this is just, you know, just different types of criticism that has no base. No, this is a critique. Nobody's trying to cancel Kendrick Lamar or anything like that. People are literally saying just, this was not it, frankly. And from this, you know, I think that even in the song, he was talking about how hypocritical it is, that kind of clicked for him, that he said this F slur so many times, but then got mad at a white girl for saying the N-word at his concert. And so when he makes that type of hypocrisy known, people are allowed to call out his further hypocrisy of then still using the F slur. It's like, oh, I don't use the F slur anymore, but uses it 10 more times to show that you don't use it anymore. Like, what sense does that make? So, like you said, if nobody wields this slur against you, if you are not the part of the community that this slur comes from, it's not yours to reclaim or use at all. Period.
I fully agree. And I think that honestly, to even add another layer to that too, like even if those particular trans relatives did give him permission, trans people are not monoliths.
Right.
Like they aren't representative of the entire community. So even if they said, "Oh yeah, say the F slur all the time, say it all, fuck it out, just say it all the time,
That's
say
cool
it as
for
many times as you want
them.
in the song." Yeah, that's cool for them, but that still doesn't make it okay. Just like if some black person gives a white person, "Oh yeah, you can say the N word around me," or whatever the case may be. That doesn't bother me. Yeah, it doesn't bother them, but it's still wrong.
Right.
Like it's still recognized as an issue, and I think that it's really frustrating to me that people just don't understand how to leave shit alone. This literally, I mean, like everybody wants to say something. Everybody, oh, it's art, or it's this, it's that, it's whatever. It's like there are so many people, so many gay artists who have talked about being gay without having to use that word, without having to use it whatsoever. They've talked about the struggles of being gay. They've sung about it. They've rapped about it. They've written about it. All those things without ever having to mention the F slur. But you, a cishet man, think, oh yes, I can use it because I'm grown. I've grown. I'm not that person anymore. And it's like it's not, the math isn't mathing.
It's not mathing at all. And like speaking of that, I remember watching this valedictorian speech of this, I think, high schooler in Florida, because they have that don't say gay bill and all of that stuff. They told their story about their identity, but instead of saying gay, they were talking about having curly hair and the societal pressure to straighten it. And so that was a way he got his message across without actually saying the words gay, because, Florida is being Florida right now. But we've had that conversation so many times, but that just proves the point. A literal high schooler knows how to just like use some wordplay, use some synonyms, like take that broad concept, think about what's at the core of it, and then using some type of other image to represent that. Like, I don't know, maybe that's because I'm a creative writing major, but like I feel like that's baseline, just like figurative language.
It's literally a metaphor. It's literally
a metaphor.
And that's the thing. Like there's so many ways to talk about or confront your bigotry and stuff like that without having to just like disrespect a community that you're trying to grow from or you're trying to learn about. And I think that there's also just a lack of research that people have within themselves to be like, hello, I'm about to do this thing and I want to know if this is something that I can do. Let me look up and see if what I'm thinking or my thought process may or may not be transphobic or homophobic or misogynistic or whatever the case may be. Like there's this level of I want to say entitlement or just blissful ignorance that a lot of people have to other people's experiences. They don't want to confront their own issues because specifically sometimes in marginalized communities as well, where they're like, I'm gay, so I can't be racist. Or I'm black, so I can't be homophobic because I know what it's like to be oppressed. It's like, no, two things can be true at the same time. You can both be oppressed and be oppressive.
Say that again. Say that again.
Two things can exist at the same time. You can be oppressed and be oppressive at the same time. So I think that there's not enough understanding of that part. Like the reality is I identify as non-binary and I go by she, her pronouns, but the world still experiences me as a gay black man. So I still benefit from male privilege. So it's my job as somebody who benefits from male privilege to recognize and protect those who do not benefit from it, who are oppressed from it. It's also recognizing the fact that, yes, I identify a certain way, but there are still people in the world who I exert privilege over.
Right.
Even though it may not be something that, even if once somebody knows my identity, it might be something different. But when people look at me and they experience me as I am, without me saying anything, they would automatically give me that privilege. So I think that it's your job as someone who receives whatever kind of privilege it may be to use that privilege, like you said, to amplify those voices, to recognize, hey, it's my job to help those who are oppressed to be at a state where they can be heard and seen.
Also,
My
give them a seat at the table. Like, this is just showing me that there wasn't a queer person in that space at all. Not a queer producer, nobody at like the listening party beforehand to just be like, oh, okay, so here are my thoughts, here are my notes that
yeah.
I have for you. Like, there was probably not a queer person anywhere at that process, because this is a 5-year album. Not anywhere in those 5 years that you even thought about considering the perspective of a queer person, asking for their perspective, giving them a seat at the table at least.
And
Interesting.
I don't really like to give too much leeway for a lot of people now, especially in 2022. I'm
Right.
not saying that he should be canceled. I'm not, we're not here to cancel people. That's not what the show is about. But I do think that I'm tired of giving people grace for things
Mhm.
that are obvious. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
didn't know the N word was bad. I didn't mean to say it. Or I didn't know saying the F slur could make so many people so mad, even though I'm not gay and I don't suffer that oppression. I don't know why it seems so bad to so many people. It's like that ignorance is no longer okay. It's no longer
Right.
okay now because it's a choice. You're choosing not to be aware of the issue.
And if his growth is so genuine, if he, really reflected on aspects of transphobia in his community in growing up, then he should also be open for feedback and learning and growing even more. And I think that that's my problem with so many people like attacking others for having a critique, because it's like he showed that he at least had some type of, cognitive, just like breaking down
Yeah.
all of this transphobia in the Black community and in the Black church. He showed some type of growth. He showed that he wanted to grow and he wanted to learn. And so when people are giving him an opportunity to learn in this instance, it's not anybody who is not a part of the queer community to shut down Lamar's ability to learn and grow.